My next guest is Dr. Chad Dumas. He is a Solution Tree PLC at Work, RTI at Work, Assessment and Priority Schools Associate, and International Consultant, Presenter, and Award-winning researcher whose primary focus is collaborating to develop capacity for continuous improvement. Having been a successful teacher, principal, central office administrator, professional developer, and consultant in a variety of school districts, he brings his passion, expertise, and skills to his writing and speaking as he engages participants in meaningful and practical learning. His Amazon best-selling books, Let's Put the C in PLC, an action guide to put the C in PLC, and the Teacher Team Leader Handbook, Chad offers readers and audiences educational research, engaging stories, hands-on tools, and useful knowledge and skills they can implement immediately. Chad was previously on the podcast in 2021, and I will link to the episode. It was episode number 69, where he talked about Let's Put the C in PLC. But we are here to talk about his latest book, the Teacher Team Leader Handbook. Welcome to the podcast, Chad.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be on with you again.
Well, we'll start off with the question I asked everyone, and this is going to be a different trench story than your previous appearance, but tell me about a time when you were in the trenches and managed to call out.
Yeah, so this book actually is a result of being in the trenches
Hmm.
with teacher team leaders.
Okay.
And what I found was I was working with teacher team leaders, and they would ask me similar questions. How do
Hmm.
you approach this? How do you do that? What's a strategy I can do for this? This is a challenge I'm having. And as a result of these questions that they would ask me, I would find myself coming back to a few simple go-to strategies and moves
Hmm.
that really have an outsized impact
Okay.
on collaboration. And so as a result of that, then I compiled those and started to write this book. And so this book came out of the trenches because it was those challenges that those teachers are experiencing that I was trying to support them in
Hmm.
and helping them to then navigate the the um, the funky dynamics, as we know, of
Yeah.
working with other people.
Hmm. Hmm. So your latest book was released in March, so not too long ago. And
Yeah,
a little bit about the book, just from the description, it helps teacher leaders understand three key responsibilities as a team leader in a PLC. It cultivates assumptions and mindsets for successful team collaboration. It utilizes tools to implement simple actions that transform team functioning. It helps teachers reflect on their progress and determine future action steps. And it also addresses common challenges that impede their effectiveness. So, just to get a background of the book, but since you were working already with schools a lot with the PLCs, what led you to writing this book over the past few years?
yeah. So as I would share these skills with team leaders, I
Mhm.
realized that they're skills that you can find a lot of people talk about them. Like
Yeah.
there's very little in this book, as in just about any book, that's actually new. There's a few strategies that I created myself, but
Mhm.
mostly it builds on the work of Michael Grinder, Kendall Zoller, Bob
Mhm.
Garmston, Art Costa, Bruce. Like there's a whole host of folks that this work builds on. What I found was folks, while they might know about those things, they're hard to like access. As a teacher team
Okay.
leader, I need something that's quick and easy that I can pick up and move with.
Mhm.
And so what this book does is it identifies. It's in two parts. First part is who you are as a person,
Mhm.
and then the second part is what you do
Okay.
as a teacher team leader. And so in the first part, that part is probably more uniquely mine than the second part, my own, thinking, because what I've done is taken from the research and I said, okay, so what is there clarity about what the responsibilities of a teacher team leader are? Teachers are taken, they're identified, they're said, hey, will you be a team leader? Go do it.
Mhm. Mhm.
But there's not clarity about what does that mean. So I identify three responsibilities of the teacher team leader. Here
Mhm.
they are. And the first two are responsibilities that I find that almost nobody talks about.
Mhm.
And that is that your first responsibility is to make sure that the safe is space.
Mm-hmm.
The space is safe, excuse me,
Yeah.
that there's psychological safety.
Mm-hmm.
The second responsibility is to build capacity.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just doing all the work for folks, you're not building capacity, and that's your second responsibility. The third responsibility, which is what people talk about, is do the work.
Mm-hmm.
My book is not about doing the work. There's a lot of great resources out there to help with doing the work. My book is about the first two. How do
Okay.
you make sure that the space is safe, and how do you make sure you're building capacity? And so that's where we start,
Mm-hmm.
is what your responsibility is.
Yeah.
And in order to fulfill those responsibilities, then I identify some assumptions that are helpful and some mindsets.
Mm-hmm.
And with that frame of who you are as a person, what your responsibilities are,
Mm-hmm.
what some assumptions are that are helpful, and what some mindsets are to help move
Mm-hmm.
the work forward. Then we can move into the second part of those actions and pull together what you need to do as a team leader, as a person, to be able to move the work forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's say that there is a new team leader listening who may have been a team leader at a previous school with well-functioning PLCs and is now going to lead a team at a new school that is really just starting with PLC process. And
Mm-hmm.
how would that person go about really implementing these first two parts?
Yeah, yeah. So I have several recommendations for
Mhm.
folks. Like, one is, yeah, you can read the book from front to cover, and it's built to be. It's called a handbook, so it's built to be something that you mark up. There's
Mhm.
lots of reflective questions and space in the margins, tools to help you with implementing these concepts. Habits, really, I love that the term that we settled on for the subtitle of the book is simple habits
Mhm.
to transform collaboration. So one way is read it through and engage with it in that way. Another way is to the last chapter 7, is
Okay.
all those challenges. So when
Mhm.
I was hearing from teacher team leaders, and then I would ask them, tell me, what are your challenges? I compiled those and identified, I don't know, 8 or 10
Mhm.
common challenges that team leaders and teams have. And then so that chapter really pulls together everything else. So
Mhm.
if you can go to that chapter and see, is there a challenge I'm having? And from my experience working with teacher team leaders since the book has come out, they've asked me a question. Here, let's go look and see, right? And
Mhm.
so we've been able to not a single challenge that has come up can't be addressed there.
Mhm.
Now there's a challenge for folks, right? Find a challenge that isn't
Yeah.
addressed in there. But it references everything else in the book.
Okay.
So you can go there and then go back.
Uh,
Another way to look at it is so chapters 1 and 2 are about who you are as a person, as I mentioned.
okay.
That really forms the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't have that clarity about your purpose, using the rest of the actions won't be as impactful. And at worst, they may even be manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
So I think chapters 1 and 2 are really important to lay that foundation. Then the chapters on the actions, I've organized them that these are things to get started.
Okay.
So this is where, right, Michael Grinder's work, Kendall Zoller's, all those others are really incredible work. What I've done is organized them to say, here, if you're getting started, these are the things that you need to go with. And then if you've got
Okay.
those solidly in place, now there's the next chapter is how do you build momentum?
Okay.
The next chapter is overcoming obstacles and finally refining your skills. So it's laid out in a logical fashion
Yeah.
to be able to say, okay, if I'm struggling with some foundational things, here we go. Open that puppy up. Here's half a dozen moves and techniques and half a dozen strategies that you can go towards to refine those skills.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
I'll also
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to mention that a final way that the question that you asked was if you're new to this position but you've
Mm-hmm.
been someplace else, is at the end of each of chapters 3, 4, 5, those chapters on getting started, building momentum, and overcoming obstacles is a story. It's a
Okay.
vignette of a teacher team leader and how they're approaching their work. And so
Okay.
one person might just go there and just read that story,
Mm-hmm.
and then it asks, how would you respond?
Yeah.
And so you can reflect, and then I give my answer, how
Mm-hmm.
I would have responded if I were that teacher. So a number of different ways. Read it front to cover, jump to chapter 7, read chapters 1 and 2, and then jump into those other chapters as you need, or just jump to those vignettes and see what jumps out at you.
So, in terms of groups of teacher team leaders, let's say whether it's district meetings for leaders from various schools or um, teachers that are on an instructional leadership team at a school, would you recommend that they maybe do a book study or um, read through several chapters as a group of team leaders to really get a handle on what they can focus on and how they can improve their practice before they're actually working with their teams?
Yeah, absolutely. That's really important.
Hmm.
I love the quote. I don't remember who I heard it from, that learning is socially constructed
Yeah.
and individually integrated.
Okay.
So that the importance of engaging in learning with colleagues socially. And I would add that this, particularly when you get into the skills part two.
Hmm.
Part one, what I found is people like that's really like, wow, I never thought of that way. And that's really helpful to engage in conversations with. And chapter 2, when we get into the skills, you got to practice those babies. And if you haven't practiced them, they will definitely feel awkward
Hmm.
and possibly even feel be perceived as awkward, contrived, or manipulative.
Hmm.
And so you got to practice them. What do I mean? Like, I'll give you just an example. One of the um, one of the first
Hmm.
moves that I share is that of pausing
Okay.
and associated breathing that goes with pausing.
Hmm.
If you're not used to pausing as part of your conversation and
Hmm.
breathing, that will look really weird.
Hmm.
I've just done it now in
Hmm.
the last 30 seconds. I've slowed down my tempo. I've taken a couple of deep breaths.
Yeah.
I've paused. That's not something that comes naturally to a lot of people.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, engaging in this book with colleagues where you can practice
Yeah.
and laugh together at your clumsy attempts of messing around with these moves, techniques, and strategies will really help you so that when you get into the heat of the battle, so to speak,
Hmm.
and there's conflict, that you
Hmm.
can meaningfully and naturally
Hmm.
use these skills without them feeling contrived or manipulative, which is
Hmm.
definitely not what we want.
Yeah, and when you're working with adults, right, there can be conflict that arises. So
Oh yeah.
I think, like you said, it's really taking the time to pause and think through things, but also just have that demeanor. I think sometimes where you're
Mm-hmm.
not trying to go at things 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So definitely recommend, studying with colleagues and practicing with each other, practicing on your spouse, practicing on your children, practicing, these are lots of skills that, uh, and they're really, the vast majority of them come from nonverbal communication science.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
they're research based and effective practices that can come natural, and many of us use them without knowing.
Hmm.
And if a person is thoughtful and intentional with these moves and techniques, then they can really increase their influence on others.
Hmm. Hmm. So the book says it has 40 techniques and strategies. Do you have
Yeah.
another move that you would be able to share?
Okay. So 40, yes, there's
Yes.
40 of them. And then I'm sorry, I missed the question. Is there
Is
what?
there another move like this pausing move that you would be able to share on the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So I call it one of the magic moves. I don't call
Okay.
it that in the book. It's just like separate, like when I do trainings and things like that. It's
Yeah.
like it works like magic. It
Mhm.
completely disarming, shifts energy, focuses on something else, and that's called a third point.
Okay.
So the idea of third point comes from Michael Grinder, and
Okay.
the idea is that the first point is yourself.
Mm-hmm.
The second point is other people or the other person that you're engaging with. And
Mm-hmm.
then the third point is some inanimate object that we're referring
Okay.
to. So when you're presenting
Mm-hmm.
in front of staff or colleagues, and you want there to be you want to develop group rapport, and you want everybody to focus their energy. We use a third point, and that's with an agenda. Many times agendas now are digital, and everybody has it on their computer. Wonderful. The problem is when everybody's looking at their computer, they're not looking at each other.
Yeah.
And when you're not looking at each other, you're not able to develop psychological safety and social sensitivity
Mm-hmm.
because we're not paying attention to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, a third point as a teacher team leader is project that agenda. Like, there's no need to write it on chartboard or white paper, although you can go for it, do that. You also can just project it on a
Yeah.
screen. And now we all look at that agenda together. And as a bonus, next level tip is you, as the teacher team leader, also look at it
Mm-hmm.
because we know from nonverbal communication science that eyes follow eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So if I look at that third point, you will also look at that third point.
Mm-hmm.
Here's where the practice comes in. That feels incredibly awkward
Mm-hmm.
as the teacher team leader. If I'm looking at that third point, it feels awkward because it feels like I should be looking at them. But
Mm-hmm.
if I look at them, now their brains don't know where they're supposed to look because we
Okay.
are generally trained to make
Yeah.
eye contact.
Uh-huh.
So they in most cultures, there are some cultures that are not that aren't trained that way, like it's
Mm-hmm.
not cultural. But in most cultures, it's almost universal that eye contact. If you're looking at somebody, you're supposed to look at them.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm looking at you, now
Mm-hmm.
you think you're supposed to look at me and
Yeah.
not at the thing. So this is where the practice comes in. This third point is a really powerful, magical, disarming strategy, but you got to practice it because it
Mm-hmm.
feels as uncomfortable as I'll get out to be
Mm-hmm.
looking at that third point instead of at my friends and colleagues.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good point. And also makes me think of like just a good way to get the adults out of their laptops. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when you're leading meetings, you do have to say like we're paying
Yep.
attention to what's going on, and there's things being projected. Like you can provide the slides and information to the teachers to review later, but like during the meeting itself or the discussion to have that tech-free zone, right? But
Yep.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think like you're saying, when you're following the eyes of the presenter to whatever they're looking at,
Yeah.
it's a good technique to get people to keep really their focus on
Yes.
what's being told about. So
Exactly. Yeah. The very first move that I share
Mhm.
in part two is it's foundational. Without that, you're not going anywhere. And it's developing group rapport. And
Mhm.
people typically know that to develop individual rapport, that's
Mhm.
pretty easy,
Yeah.
right? And when we have rapport, people tend to mirror each other.
Mhm.
If I fold my arms, a few seconds later, if we're in rapport, you'll also fold your arms. If
Mhm.
I am using your large gestures, you'll also start to use large gestures. If we're not in rapport, that won't happen.
Mhm.
But when you're in a group of three,
Mhm.
four, five, or more people, and say you're standing,
Mhm.
people aren't going to just start to stand, right?
Yeah.
Like the group rapport is developed in a different way, and the way you develop group rapport is with synchronicity. That's getting
Okay.
everybody to do the same thing at the same time.
Mhm.
So computers are bad for that because if everybody's looking at their computer, we're not synchronized. So
Mhm.
that's where a third point can come in. Now everybody's looking at that. That's where a turn and talk, have a conversation because now everybody's turning and having a conversation with each other. That's where humor comes in. If you get people to laugh about something, now we're all breathing from the same place, low in the diaphragm, and we're laughing. That's creating group rapport. So
Mhm.
these are all little small techniques that are really helpful to develop that group rapport, which all goes back to part one, the
Yeah.
responsibility of making it safe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Those are things we don't always think about as somebody, who either leads PLCs or, just professional development at their school, but it's really focusing on those ways to keep the audience engaged, right? And there are things that overlap from teaching students to teaching adults, but also
Oh yeah.
teachers are often that we're students. So we do need
Yeah.
to really think more about how we keep them engaged and develop that rapport, like you said, from the get-go. So
Mhm.
thanks for sharing those tips. So you do, as I mentioned in the bio, a lot of work with Solution Tree as
Mhm.
a PLC at work, RTI at work, and Assessment Priority Schools associate. And you also have your own consultancy, Next Learning Solutions. Tell me about some of the services that you provide for schools.
Yeah. So the services I provide to schools, so on the solution tree side is all the PLC at work, RTI at work, assessment and priority schools stuff, and that can be training, it can be coaching. A lot of during the school year tends to be a lot of coaching in small groups, teams of
Mhm.
teachers, leadership teams, individual principals, central office administrators, etc. On my own consulting, it's the format is the same, either trainings or coaching, small groups, one-on-one, district office leadership, building principals, leadership teams in the building, teacher
Mhm.
teams. The difference is the intellectual property. On the solution tree side, it's all the solution tree intellectual property. On my
Mhm.
consulting side, it's all my intellectual property. So it's around the book that I was on here last time. Let's put the C in PLC.
Mhm.
So I have a collaborative leadership academy that develops the leadership capacity of school leaders.
Mhm.
This book, The Teacher Team Leader Handbook, so that's all my own intellectual property. Although I also do that for Solution Tree, right? That kind of overlaps. But
Mhm.
yeah, so the difference is basically the intellectual property. Who owns the work? If it's owned by Solution Tree, then Solution Tree is who I hires me, and
Sure.
if it's not, then that's through Next Learning Solutions.
Okay, okay. And then are there people that often would want you for both, or is it kind of split that you go to a school or district for one entity for Solution Tree, for example, and that's the district you work with for Solution Tree, or is it kind of overlapping sometimes?
If it starts with Solution Tree, I keep it there because that's
Okay.
so even if it goes on to my intellectual property, like the book, right? Like Solution
Mhm.
Tree published it, but it's my intellectual property.
Mhm.
I We still go through Solution Tree because
Okay.
that's the right place to go. They have significant resources that are
Mhm.
invested into marketing, and people who are contacts with schools and such. And so it would not be right for me to say, okay, you found out about me through Solution Tree. Now I'm going to go off and funnel services away from Solution Tree. That would not be the right thing to do. I think integrity is pretty darn important.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so if it starts with Solution Tree, we're going to continue with Solution Tree regardless of the intellectual property.
Sounds good. You also tend to speak at conferences. Tell me
Mhm.
about an upcoming conference you'll be speaking at in the fall.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited. As you know, you're going to be presenting there as well, Learning Forward in Boston
Mhm.
in December. They are the learning conference. It's a conference I've attended just about every year since 2004.
Okay.
And so it's a really incredible honor to present for them. This year, they received almost 900 proposals and
Mhm.
accepted fewer than 250.
Mhm.
And so yours, congratulations, was one of those, fewer than 250, and mine was as well. And mine is it's focused on the Teacher Team Leader Handbook. So it's a 2 hour session. I think it's on Tuesday morning of the conference.
Mhm.
On It'll be a brief overview. Here we go. Let's pull out some of the highlights from this resource.
Mhm. Mhm. Good. Yeah, I think I'm doing the roundtable discussions. So I'll definitely put that on my calendar to see your session. And yeah, I went for the first time last December, and it's a different
Uh-huh,
format for those who haven't
uh-huh.
attended learnings. Um, that it's learning forward because it's a ticket like you get the conference
Mhm.
registration, but you have to like get a ticket to each talk, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
um so it's not like there's overflow in the different sessions, and you kind of have to plan ahead and on those
yeah,
types of things. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not a rush to get to the session because there may not be a seat. You've got a seat because you signed up in advance and have your ticket. Yeah,
mhm, mhm.
yeah.
Well, we've had a great conversation today about your latest book, the Teacher Team Leader Handbook, what led you to writing it, and some of the work that you do with schools. Out of everything we've talked about today, what's one thing you'd like listeners to remember?
I'd like to listeners to remember two things. Who you are matters,
Mm-hmm.
and what you do makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So anything you can do to invest in yourself, to clarify who you
Mm-hmm.
are as a person, and to enhance your skills as a leader will pay dividends.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Where can people connect with you and find you online?
Yeah, so I've got a website, nextlearningsolutions.com. And then I'm on Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
X. I got on there early enough, so there's no numbers or underlines or anything. It's just Chad Dumas. That's it. Two D's in the middle. Chad, Chad, Dumas, Dumas. I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I've got tiny URLs for that, tinyurl.com/learning Chad
Mm-hmm.
and tinyurl.com/FB learning Chad.
Okay.
And I might also mention that in addition to, so even if you don't own the book,
Mm-hmm.
what Solution Tree, every book I've seen from them has free reproducibles you can access, even if you don't
Okay.
own it. And so there's about 50 free reproducibles for this book on the Solution Tree website
Mm-hmm.
um, as PDFs. And then if you go to my website, I have them as Google Docs.
Okay.
So if you want them, you just make a copy and do whatever you want with it. And that tiny URL, I like tiny URLs. tinyurl.com/TTLH Chad, as in Teacher Team Leader Handbook Chad, TTLH Chad. So
Okay.
about 50 free downloadable reproducibles for anybody, regardless of whether or not you own the book.
Great. Well, it's great to know. And I'll make sure those are in the show notes. Well, thank you so much for being my guest again on the Out of the Trenches podcast. It was a pleasure hearing from you and about your work and how it is continuing to serve those teacher team leaders to really have more impact on their teams and then in the long run help the
Yeah,
students at their schools.
absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.